Game 11 this week, and Adam, we get our last trip to Pullman, Washington. We think it'll be our last trip, unless CU schedule some non-conference home and home to kind of punish us a little bit. But it should be our last trip to Pullman, and it hasn't been good for the Buffs up there.
No.
I know I've been up there 3 times. I don't know how many times you've been up there, but I've been up there 3 times. Never seen a good football game by the Buffs, and a couple of things that have been common: the Buffs play bad football, and the weather's not very good. So we'll see if this week can change that or not.
Well, it's funny. My first trip to cover a CU football game out in Pullman was in 2012, and Mike Leach got very stubborn, would not run the football, and that allowed Colorado to mount a very big late comeback and win that football game. And it was actually a nice day out there. You stay in Spokane usually when you cover games out there because it's hard to find hotels in Pullman. So had a nice long run along the river there in Spokane. I was like, oh, this is kind of a fun trip. Every trip since then has been absolutely miserable. And our last trip, this is a memory I'll never forget. It's sleeting sideways, and we just got done covering a horrible football game. The post-game press conference was more like an interrogation, and we carpooled out there from Spokane. We're walking back to the parking garage. You turn to me and say, "I hate this place." And so that's a memory that I associate that with Pullman now.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been a good place. I mean, like I said, the weather's been bad. The football's been bad. The 3 football games I've seen out there, I've seen 1 Colorado touchdown, and that was in a 41-10 loss. And so I have reason to think those things, right? And I think this week will be better. I think this is a better CU team that's going out there. You saw a good day and a lot of touchdowns that one day, but I think we'll see more of that this week. I think the Buffs are going to play better than what we've seen the past few times they've been in Pullman, and frankly, this is an interesting game because you got the Buffs that have been reeling, 4 straight losses. Although, they've been close losses, right? They're playing ranked teams close. Then you have Washington State that was 4-0 at one point and ranked, and now they're 4-6. So they've lost 6 in a row. It's an interesting football game between 2 teams that are really struggling.
And this is why I hate doing the preseason thing where you look at the schedule, you go win, loss, win, loss. To me, Arizona here in Senior Day was a win for me coming into the season, and they were much better than I expected. And then, even going into the season, I thought Friday night in Pullman in November, Washington State, this is probably a game you're not going to have in the win column. Now, all of a sudden, especially after last week's result, this is a game you got to win if you want to carry some momentum with this program that they're building under Coach Prime into the offseason. And they are very similar statistically, and that's something that Coach Prime mentioned in his press conference. They're both teams that need their passing offense to be clicking, to live up to their potential. And Cameron Ward is a really good quarterback now. He's not on the level of the Michael Penix and Bo Nix and Caleb Williams, or even maybe a Shedeur Sanders, although statistically they're pretty close this season. Yeah. He's more turnover prone than Shedeur has been this season, so that's the one advantage that he has going into that. But you got to make them uncomfortable, and that's something we mentioned in our midweek analysis. That's something we've heard from Colorado's players and coaches this week, that if Cam Ward is back there comfortable, then that's when Washington State is really dangerous. Now, this is a Washington State team that is coming off back-to-back-to-back losses to Arizona State, Stanford, and Cal.
Yep.
You just say that, this is a game you should win, even though the odds makers have them as underdogs going in.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting because before the season, when I looked at the rosters in the Pac-12, I would have put Colorado right there with Washington State. That's kind of where I had them. And so here they are in the standings. They're in the same spot. They have the same record. This game's for last place, to avoid last place. And statistically, like you mentioned, you look at most of the categories, and it's if Colorado's 8th in something, Washington State's 7th or 9th. They're right there. And so they've played similar seasons this year. And the quarterbacks are interesting. They've had the same path in a way. They both started FCS, were dominant FCS players, and then got their chance in the Pac-12 and have been pretty good Pac-12 players. And so it does. I think a lot of this comes down to the quarterback and which quarterback plays better and doesn't turn over the ball.
So for Colorado, that is, do you protect Shedeur Sanders? And if they do as good a job as they did against Arizona this past Saturday, while it was far from perfect, that would probably be enough, I think, to get a win on the road at Washington State. Put the performance together like you did at UCLA, you're just not going to win a football game. It's that simple. So, again, the onus is on them. And Coach Prime's been trying to love up that line group a little bit the last few weeks because he's trying to build them back up a little bit. You know, their confidence just had to be shattered. And so hopefully that does kind of catapult them a little bit. Obviously, they need some pieces in there for next year. But you got the group you do right now, and you got 2 games left, and you need to win them both to get to a bowl game. So, I'm anxious to see can that group just be serviceable out there in Pullman.
Well, and I will say, at one point, especially after that UCLA game when he really got on that line, they were on pace to set a school record for sacks. They're below that pace now, and so they're just below it. But they are below it. They've been better the last few weeks. Only gave up 3 last week, which is a low number for this group. That's good. You can live with 3. One of them was an intentional grounding, actually, where Shador didn't get drilled or anything like that. So you can live with 3 if one of them is like that. So prediction time. What do you think?
Well, this is an interesting Washington State team. They were the laughingstock of college football, then perfect hire for them at the time. Mike Leach comes in there, and he makes them very competitive. And then the Nick Rolovich saga, I'm not going into all that because that's like PTSD back to the COVID pandemic. But anyways, they hired Jake Dickert as their interim head coach. He'd never been a head coach before. Yeah. He does enough to get that permanent job, but it's trending in a negative direction up there. Obviously, 6 straight losses. I wonder what they're going to do, and they've got some bigger issues to deal with. What's that going to look like next year? So a lot in flux with the Washington State football program right now. And normally, like I mentioned, I would not pick Colorado to go on the road on a short week in November and beat Washington State, but the way they've been trending lately, Colorado has shown me enough in the last 3 weeks that I believe that they're going to win this football game, but it's going to be a tough matchup. It's going to come down to the wire. Give me Colorado winning on a late game-winning touchdown to win 35-34.
Okay. So I've picked Colorado the last 5 weeks, and it hasn't gone well the last 4.
You're a jinx.
I've been a jinx. And I've said the last couple of weeks there's not a whole lot of reason to pick them, against Oregon State, UCLA, things like that. But I just had that feel like I thought they were going to turn it around. Well, I still feel that way, but I feel like I need to reverse my pick now to get that jinx away. I definitely agree with you. I think this is a very winnable football game for the Buffs. I think that if you're ever going to go out in Pullman, this is your last time. If you're ever going to go out in Pullman and win a game, this is it. And it's interesting you picked 35-34. Actually, it just dawned on me that was the score of the 2012 game. Okay. So with a late touchdown actually. Okay. So I'm getting off track here, but
it'll look better with Shador Sanders scoring that game-winning touchdown than it did Jordan Webb.
Right. I agree with you. So I think Colorado can definitely go out and win this game, but for karma's sake, I'm going to pick Washington State to win it, 35-31. I agree that I think it's going to be a good football game, down to the wire, 2 close games, or 2 teams that are very similar, but just give me that lean towards Washington State right now.
Are you at all worried now if Colorado goes out and wins this game that folks won't ever let you pick a CU win again then?
Yeah, but there's only 1 game after this, and hopefully they'll forget by next August.
Fair enough. But, it's going to be like old times. There's only going to be 3 of us traveling out to cover this game. Matt Smith is going out as well, so it's kind of, like I said, back to old times. And that's one of the more awkward post-game press conference settings. It's in a dark weight room, and the coach sits under a spotlight. And in the past, the media didn't even have chairs, so you're standing over the coach. Was the last time they were out there with Mel Tucker?
2019, with Tucker.
So I don't know. Hopefully they've changed that, or the CU wins big, so we don't have that awkward post game.
Right. Well, we'll find out. We're going to find out here in a couple of days, and we'll be back after the game to talk about it.